Valorant dropped this short cinematic video out of the blue the other night, but there's actually a fair bit of lore to unpack within it. This short does an incredible job of bringing together Phoenix and Mary's story up until this point, which we've been building towards throughout the year, while also doing some world building around First Light and the social consequences of that event. The story here is mostly told as a local radio interview, with Phoenix even tuning in as he makes his way home for the holidays, and there's even a couple of kids who look just like him and Mary watching on in awe. Within Valorant's lore, Mary is becoming a singer, so while there are no plans to make her a playable agent in-game, you may have seen her around some of the maps before. She's doing the rounds to promote her new single, Ego, and that song in itself is how she expressed her experiences in the fallout of First Light, and Phoenix becoming isolated from their family. As Mary puts it, the song is about love, loss, and the space in between. Holding on to who you are even when the world tries to rewrite your story, and that's exactly what we see happen to Phoenix in the aftermath of First Light, but we'll get to that later. When the host asks about Phoenix, or Jamie, to his sister, Mary lights up talking about how much she idolized him, even going as far as to call him legendary. Even when he had no powers, he was her big brother and she adored him. While this is happening, we see Jamie passing by his old school, which has always been an instrumental part of his backstory. Since the game's launch, we've seen that same school burning down in the Firestarter player card from his contract. The host asks if there was a moment when things changed, and this transports us back to the night of First Light. Around this time, Jamie was already sneaking out at night, which upset Mary. She was worried that something might happen to him, and it seems like she took it upon herself to follow behind and see what he was up to, leading to her being caught up in the fire as well. There's this awesome depiction of Phoenix getting his powers, which I do want to hone in on, but more importantly, and what this short wants to focus on, is how this night scarred his family. Not just physically, like we can see on Mary's face, but emotionally too. One of Phoenix's mums is a firefighter who would have been first hand on scene to see all this chaos and confusion, and then you can see his other mum getting a phone call of what's happened. Also in this telling of the night of the fire, we once again see this mysterious figure who we also saw in the Ego cinematic a few months back. To me, this design absolutely represents a pre-Valorant Cypher. He has all the same design choices with a big hat, glasses and a trench coat, and of course his face is entirely hidden too. There's even a really subtle sound effect which sort of resembles some of his utility in game.
My ultimate is ready.
This raises the question of both why and how Cypher was here, assuming this is him of course. He is somewhat of an enigma and we don't know much about his backstory or how he came to join Valorant, just that he has incredible networking and surveillance skills. This figure could simply be shown just to represent the concept of a shadowy organization keeping an eye on things, but to me this is a much more deliberate character, and again my guess is Cypher. Anyway though, this is where Mary and the host go on to give us completely new context around the state of the world after First Light, and it's a tale of fear. They describe a city in lockdown, emergency crews everywhere, curfews being enforced, people were even talking about exposure in the air, which itself seemed to breathe different after the event. That fear and uncertainty coincides with how the general public reacted to the sudden appearance of Radiance, and you only have to look at Phoenix's story as an example of that. Imagine this ordinary kid suddenly uncontrollably summoning fire all around him. Without a deeper understanding or research around Radiance and Radionite, there's simply no explanation for that. In those first days and weeks after First Light, Radiants weren't celebrated like we see now on Omega Earth, instead they were feared. Not only that, but Mary even outright says there was a lot of misinformation going around. People felt like there were monsters walking amongst them. The public were afraid of neighbors, friends, and even their own family members. This paranoia and stigma alone would have already led Phoenix to become isolated anyway, but he wasn't just any Radiant. He was put in a special category, probably due to the sheer strength or potential of his powers, which is why he got whisked away to join the Valorant protocol. Even after some other Radiants got reintegrated, Phoenix never did, and then the narrative shifted. Radionite was discovered and society just seemed to move on with this new world. Fear turned into understanding and Radiance became a part of everyday life, evident by this Radiant nursery which we see Phoenix walking past. The world has changed so much since he left. Radiant children are now supported and understood, which contrasts with how he would have been treated immediately after First Light. Speaking of, I wanted to take another look at this depiction of Phoenix getting his powers, because this moment of him getting caught up in First Light on the roof of his school is probably the most visually striking part of the entire video. I don't think we outright have confirmation from Riot that proximity to these beams matters, but to me at least, it seems a natural assumption that getting directly struck by whatever this was would probably lead to stronger powers and that special category we talked about earlier. Jamie goes from just a normal kid to someone capable of destroying an entire building in a matter of seconds, and the consequence of that power occurs immediately. He has no time to mold or understand his new abilities before disaster strikes. I also love this shot in particular of Phoenix being split as the radiance hits him as he appears divided. This duality occurs where he is both Jamie and Phoenix, both human and radiant, shifting from being a part of a family to all of a sudden being an outcast with these powers. You could also interpret this as showing the two versions of Phoenix on Alpha Earth and Omega Earth, as it's believed that First Light could be what caused this split between the two worlds in their history, and therefore what caused this mirrorverse to exist at all. Eventually, the interview catches up to modern day, where Phoenix and Mary are reunited. He showed up and watched her perform, which mattered to both of them and helped repair their relationship. I thought this was a really beautiful way to end this arc of Phoenix discovering himself and returning home. I also love the way Riot have been exploring the consequences of First Light on a more social and emotional level this year. Firstly with some of Reyna and her sister earlier on with the Why We Fight cinematic and Ego song, and now with this revelation of lockdowns, curfews, and people being fearful of Radiance. We definitely still have a lot to learn about the world of Valorant. In particular, in this story, I'd love to see more of the recruitment process or what Phoenix went through immediately after his incident, but again, we've definitely gotten a deeper understanding of First Light this year. Hopefully in the future, we'll get highlights like this on some of the other agents and their stories, so let me know which agent you'd like to see Riot put a microscope to next. I feel like we've already seen some agents, like obviously Phoenix here, and even Omen fleshed out a little more than others, whereas someone like Astra and the origin of her powers fascinate me, but we don't really know that much. So yeah, let me know who you want to see more of in Valorant's lore.